Hello, welcome to my third webinar for mindgames.gg. Today we're going to talk about what elite performance is and why it's important to know exactly how elite performance functions in the mind. And then I'm also going to cover a couple tips on how to reduce tilting. And this ties in with the theme today, what elite performance is, because with the knowledge that you gain about how your mind functions when you're playing, you'll be able to work at reducing your choking in game. So I just want to talk about the layout for today. First, I'm going to go through a quick presentation, maximum 25-30 minutes. I'll burn through it, and then we'll go straight into the Q&A section. So I have a Q&A app as part of this Google Plus Hangouts, and you can write your questions there at any time. As the webinar is running, you can post them there, and when I click on them, then it'll bring them up and I'll address them then. So if something comes up and you want clarity as I'm doing the presentation, just go ahead and type it in the Q&A app. And when I get to that part, I'll bring those questions up and answer them. Just making sure that it's on. Okay, so it should be great. So I already have the first response that it works because last time I broke it, so it wasn't working then. All right, so I'm going to hop behind my slides real quick and I'll see you again face to face after I'm done with the slides. Okay, I think everybody can see that now. So yes, my website is mindgames.gg. I'm a professional electronic sports psychologist. Actually, I'm a professional sports psychologist. And right now I'm coaching an EU LCS team and a North American Challenger team. And in the sporting world, I coach swimmers. I coach para-Olympic and Special Olympic athletes. And in swimming, I actually train not just the mind, but also the sport because I'm a swimming physiological scientist. But in League of Legends and in esport, I train simply the strategy of how it is that you perform at an elite level. So I don't talk so much about in-game strategy and things like that. For those things, the players are the experts. So my website is set up to serve people who are trying to go pro, essentially. Those who want to go from video game player to esport athlete. There's a particular mindset that goes along with that. There's a particular set of skills. And these webinars are every couple of weeks I do one in order to try to help people reach that point in their play. So without further ado, let me get into the topic of today, which is elite performance. So I'm going to answer a couple questions. What is elite performance? How do I get there? Given that, what is tilting? How can I train for tilting? What happens when I plateau? So these training plateaus you hit where you feel like you don't progress, how do you overcome those? And what are they like in the brain? And finally, is there anything else that's important? Effective versus efficient training is what I'm going to talk about there. So number one, I want to talk about how sports psychology defines what is elite. Actually, I'm going to talk about performance psychology because it's the same thing in life as it is in sport. So if you look at people like Tony Robbins, who's a performance coach, a success coach, one of the most successful in the world. He's coached people like Oprah, Bill Clinton, Andre Agassi. He went recently on a mission to interview the most successful people in finance around the world. And he used a definition that is common across all performance, that elite is the top 0.02% of performers. And you can tell if something functions the same way that sport does, the same way that performance does, if you look at a distribution of the people who do it. And this picture is a distribution of people who play League of Legends. And as you can see, aside from this is actually from last season, so there was this thing where you couldn't fall out of your ranking. But aside from those points, you see that this distribution represents what human performance looks like. And up in Challenger, you can see that 0.02% of elite players. So this is how we know as sports psychologists, as performance psychologists, that League of Legends, that esport functions the same way as other types of human performance. However, if I just talk about elite performance from the sports psychology side, how we understand elite performance is really complex. It has all of these elements. And I work on all of these one-on-one with the people I'm training. But that's not helpful for today. It's way too complex, and a lot of these don't matter for just your day-to-day way of how you train. And so today I want to look at what elite is. I want to understand elite from the point of view of a neuroscientist. So how does a neuroscientist define elite? What happens in the brain when you are elite, in other words? It's an automation of movement. More specifically, an automation of movement that wins. So let me give you an example. I coach Special Olympic swimmers. So these are people who have autism or Down syndrome or some sort of high functioning mental disorder. And they swim competitively. And they go every 4 years to compete in the Olympics. So the last one was in Athens 2 years ago, where I had some swimmers performing. And they can do automated movements. So walking, swimming, these are natural things for all humans. When the brain learns a skill, puts it all together, the better you get at doing the skill, the more automatic it is. But of course, there's a difference between elite athletes and normal people because they tweak their skills. They make sure they don't automate bad movements. But let me be clear that you're doing the same thing. An elite athlete and a non-elite athlete, they both automate the movement. But the elite athlete has automated a better movement, one that wins. So most of what non-elite performance is, it's not a bunch of people that haven't learned a skill. It's not a bunch of people that haven't learned what to do. What non-elite performance is it's a bunch of people that haven't learned how to learn. They've picked up a skill and they've automated it, but it's the wrong skill. It's not the one that wins. Just as an example, I met an AD carry player from the team that I'm coaching, and he got injured out of his athletic career. He was nearly pro. And he decided, since he couldn't walk anymore, he still had this competitive drive. He wanted to do something. He found League of Legends. He picked it up. Because he had the mentality of an elite athlete that he transferred over from his previous sport, he hit diamond in 3 weeks because he was continuously learning from his experience and he was adjusting his automation until it was correct. He was trying to automate the correct skill. And because he was starting from scratch, he didn't have a lot of erasing to do. So he used that system to his advantage. So let me go a little bit more in detail. This is a picture that I want to describe. This is how you learn something complex like League of Legends or Counter-Strike Global Offensive. You start out, you don't know a lot. That's the bottom left-hand corner here. And you learn a lot really fast. You learn, for example, in League of Legends, you learn how to buy from the vendor, you learn how to walk off the fountain, you learn how to get to lane, you start learning how to CS, you start learning how to trade. All these little basic skills you pick up really fast. There's all sorts of new things to learn right away. And so in 1 week, that's this blue thing here, you go from pretty low, you increase a lot, you go up the scale a lot through 1 week in time. But now you're good at the game. And so now you're up near this gold part. You're starting to like slow down a little. In 1 week, you don't learn as many new skills. And that's because you don't have exposure to as many new skills. So when you first start playing League of Legends, for example, you learn in everything that you do. Walking through the jungle, watching people do jungle camps, there's all these things that you learn. But later on, you know where the jungle camps are. You know how to get to lane. You check out when you do these things because you already know them. So the moments of learning are fewer and fewer and farther between. And that's why skill pickup slows down as you get better and better. So this is the basics of automation. At the beginning, you're automating a lot of things. At the end, you're trying to learn new things while trying to improve on the things that you already know. So given what we know now about automation, what is tilting? Well, let's just reverse our definition. Tilting is the unautomation of your movement that wins. So it's when you try to take control of it, the voluntary control of what should be an involuntary action. In 2014, so last year and or 2 days ago, there was a day, July 8th, in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, and it was a game of football, soccer, since I'm American, but football for the rest of you, between Brazil and Germany. You may have heard about this game. You may have watched this game. It was supposed to be an epic showdown between a powerhouse and a very traditionally strong soccer nation. But 23 minutes into the game, Germany scored a second goal. And what emerged afterwards, you could only describe as choking. So in the next 6 minutes, 3 goals were walked basically in past disbelieving defenders as they watched their ability to play football crumble in front of their eyes. They looked like amateur players. Now, there's a saying in sport that it's hard to define what choking is, but you know it when you see it. So there's a lot that goes into choking. And there's a lot more than just what I'm describing here, the unautomation of movement that wins. But if we look at it from this particular point of view, if we understand it from this point of view, I can enable you to train for it. So let me describe really quick what I mean by automated movement. In your brain, you have a motor cortex. This motor cortex has several different areas. One of them controls voluntary muscle movement, and the other one controls involuntary muscle movement. So these systems intermesh all the time. You can check out when you're walking. You can just walk down a sidewalk while you're doing something else, and your body will still walk. Or you can take conscious control of that movement, and you can move your feet exactly where you want to go. So you see that you can control these kind of movements both voluntarily and involuntarily. And when you're an elite athlete, you're an expert at a certain movement, you're able to do that movement very similar to the way people can walk. Almost everybody is an elite walker, but not everybody is an elite esport player. But those elite esport players, when they move their fingers, sometimes they're not thinking about it. In fact, I can guarantee that most of the time they're not voluntarily thinking about it, because studies have shown that when you concentrate on your movement, when you voluntarily control them, reflexes slow down and you start making mistakes. That is what tilting is. So people, their movement unautomates. They start focusing on them. They start trying to control the movement, and poof, your skill evaporates because your skill is hidden in that massively complex movement which you have automated. And when you start to control it using your conscious motor cortex, all of your skill disappears, or a lot of it. So how can you train for this? How can you train for the moment when your skill suddenly starts disappearing and you're trying to control your motions? There's a way to stop yourself from doing that, and that is to practice it. So we're going to go with the specificity of training principle. You have to make yourself tilt if you want to practice tilt. You can try role playing. You can look at every tilting situation as an opportunity instead of a curse. So next time you're tilting, think, yes, I'm tilting. This is great. Now I can practice what to do. There was a basketball player. He was a three-point shooter, quite a famous one. And he was always brought into the game to score extra points at really important moments. And he was really good after he had warmed up. Like, he always missed the first few shots, but then he started nailing them. And he couldn't figure out how he could make it so that he could get that first shot. And he realized he wasn't training correctly. He was going and he was just shooting thousands of three-point shots. So what he did was he went and sat on the bench. And he put on his headphones and he put on his sweats and he just relaxed. He sat there for 10 minutes just chilling out. And then his coach blew an air whistle or an air horn, like right by his head. And he'd jump up, sprint to the three-point line, and shoot a shot. One shot. And then he would go back and he'd relax for 15 minutes. Okay, because that is what performance demands are like. In League of Legends, for example, and I apologize if there's StarCraft players here or Counter-Strike players here. In League of Legends, when you're playing a solo queue game and you start tilting, what do? You check out of the game mentally. You're like, or you try really hard and you get frustrated. And then right after the game, a lot of people, they want to erase that memory from their mind. They want to play a good game where they were in control of themselves. They usually re-queue, or they go do something else, try to forget about it. You don't have that opportunity when you're doing elite performance. You only have the one game that you're playing. And afterwards, you have to live with the result. So one of the best ways to make yourself tilt is to imagine that it's a very serious game. Before the game, you prep. You think, okay, this next game is like the most important game of my life. You start to role play it. You give yourself 10, 15 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes, or maybe you just play one game that day that you're practicing tilting. It's like the only game you get. And then after the game, you live with the consequences. You're not allowed to re-queue right away. You're not allowed to go and distract yourself with hobbies and other things. You have to live with the consequences of that match for a couple minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, however long it takes. So if you role play like that, you can make yourself treat the game very seriously mentally, and it will improve your chance to tilt, because people, when they're really nervous about their performance, they tend to start tilting. So then you have a chance to practice it. So now you're getting tilting. How do you practice it? Here are the 3 things that I want you to do. Focus on the now, focus on the task, focus on the problem. And I'm going to go over all 3 of these in depth real quick. So you focus on the now, not the past or the future. Marcus Aurelius was one of the greatest emperors that Rome ever had. Although Rome kind of decayed after no, that's another story. Anyway, he was a Stoic. And one of the things he said was, remember that man lives only in the present. In this fleeting instant, all the rest of his life are either past and gone or not yet revealed. Confine yourself to the present. Remember that you can only act in the present. Everything else is a useless distraction. There is no time machine that you can go and fix what you did 5 seconds ago. And there's no way you can see what's going to happen 10 seconds in the future. You just have to do what you can do right now. So focus your mind on the now. Focus your mind on the task. Just as actions exist only in the present, actions exist only in the world. So thought, like thinking about doing things, it's nothing. It is within thought that arguments are made for your failure. It's within those thinking and that cognition that tilting occurs. It's within thinking that you put limits on yourself and your abilities. I think the best advice to follow is Nike's when they say, just do it. Actions only exist in the world when they're done. They don't exist in your mind. So thinking is for afterwards. If it was the wrong thing to do, then you can fix your automation like after the fact. You can go and say, okay, apparently I automated the wrong behavior because I was just doing it and I lost. So then you refine your training. But for now, in the moment, you rely on your training. You just do it. And you say, okay, I'm going to do what I'm capable of, and then I'll fix it later if it's not enough. Okay, and the third thing is I want you to focus on the problem. So a lot of people focus on the behaviors that caused the problem. They judge themselves or others. So let's say you're playing the top lane in DOTA 2 or in League of Legends, or the long lane, I guess it would be on the purple side in DOTA 2, and the enemy jungler comes and ganks you. You're behind in the lane, and then your jungler comes and he dies to your opponent. Oh gosh. So what's the problem? You might lose due to their fed top laner. That is the problem. The behaviors, there's loads of behaviors in here. There was the jungler dying. There was the other jungler getting lucky. There was you not being good enough. There was all these other things like the picks, maybe champion select, blah, 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 blah. None of that matters. You don't have any time to waste on behaviors or judgment if you want to win. Let me go back to Marcus Aurelius. The secret of all victory lies in the organization of the non-obvious. You need all of your mental faculties to tackle the problem. So every problem is tackleable. If you're behind in lane and your jungler died to the enemy top laner and he's taken your turret and you're at risk of being ganked, that's a problem to solve. That's something you can practice. That's an opportunity. If it's not like a world championship match, or a trial match, or even if it is a trial match, that's an opportunity for you to learn how to deal with this problem, how to overcome it. So you focus on trying to come up with creative solutions, trying to organize the non-obvious in a way that makes you the victor. Focus on the problem and not the behaviors. Okay, now I want to talk about plateauing. So plateauing, we have this skill level that you get to, and you don't understand what happens, but you play and you play and you play, and you don't get any better. You don't reach to that higher level that you see other people who are playing get to. And part of the reason is because there's a difference between playing and training, and between training and training effectively. So let me return to this image from earlier in the presentation. Now, as you get better and better in skill, like I said earlier, there are fewer and farther between moments of learning in the game. So the best people who can learn constantly when they're training are those who can isolate moments of learning and exaggerate them extensively. So one of my best examples of this is Faker, who is a League of Legends mid player from Korea. And he came to the US for the Season 3 World Championships, and he learned a new character when he was over here. He practiced him in solo queue, or her, it was Riven. And if you look at the training videos from that time, which you can find on YouTube, you'll see that when he was walking from the fountain to lane, this is a skill that most people just do automatically. They don't turn it into training because they already know how to do this. It's a skill that they've mastered, clicking on the lane and walking there. Okay, Faker treated it as if he had never done it before. The entire way to lane, he was training his animation canceling. He was training his turret jumping. He was training his weaving between the creep waves. Whenever there was a minion wave coming, he would like weave between it using skills. So he was taking every single opportunity in the game to practice. That means he was much more efficient at learning, effective at learning in every minute than his opponents. You can do this even with a character that uses mana. I mean, there's no reason that you need mana in the lane. Think of it as a handicap. Use the mana on the way to lane to train your combos. Why not? What are you trying to get better at? Beating your lane opponent? Or are you trying to get better at winning the game, at beating yourself? You're either automating a bad movement or you aren't learning anything because you are simply practicing what you already know. This is what plateauing is. So there's golfers that go out there and they start golfing and they immediately become really good. And then they golf for 10 years, 15 years, and they never get any better. It's because when they go out and golf, they're simply practicing what they already know. They go up and they hit the ball off the tee, and usually they play the same course, and then they go out and they hit the ball, and they never focus on training what it is that they don't know, finding those skills. So if you look at a professional golfer, he'll hit a ball, then he'll drop 6 or 7 balls down in the exact same spot, and he'll hit it 6 more times, trying out little adjustments, trying to improve his shot. A lot of people do something partially good and they say, hey, that's great. Like this basketball player I told you about, he went into the game, he shot 2 free throws and he missed the first 2, and then he made 6 in a row. He was like, oh, that's great. But he didn't see it like that. He saw those 2 missed free throws as not perfect. And so he learned how to train that. Professional golfers, they hit a shot down the runway. Most people would think, oh, that's great. And they'd walk down to their ball. The professional golfer who's really committed, he says, that didn't go in the hole. And his playing partner is like, are you kidding me? You're at the tee. Why would it go in the hole? He says, if I hit it perfectly, it would have gone in the hole. And it didn't. Let me try it again. I meet some League of Legends teams that they don't want to hire me because they say we don't have a problem. And I would like to contend that they do have a problem. If you're not the world champion, then you have a problem. You're not the best. That is the mindset that is holding people back from learning new things. That is the mindset of simply practicing what you already know, being good enough, but not better. Diana Nyad swam from Cuba to the United States. And when she was 15 hours off the beach, they told her for the first time how close she was, because she'd been attempting this for 40 years. And when they told her it was only 15 more hours, this would be a long time for most swimmers. What she said is, you have no idea how many 15-hour training swims I've done. So she practiced what she needed to practice in order to succeed. It was non-obvious training. A normal person can't swim from Cuba to the United States because they just go and they swim a few hours. She practiced swimming for 24 hours straight, 34 hours straight, because she knew she would need those skills. We do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. So how you practice is how you play. If you're plateauing, it's not because you can't achieve more. It's because you're not training to achieve more. So you have to find ways of getting that leverage. And here are some resources to do that. You can follow traditional sport. How do they overcome this obstacle? They do drills. They take the game and they break it apart into smaller increments, and they try to find strange and interesting ways to practice skills they need on the pitch. So you need to learn how to set workhorse goals, which are basically training drills for your esport or for League of Legends. Because I know this game, I do this kind of training. So you can go to instagram.com/league goals or mindgames.gg/league goals. And I'm setting up training drills. These are for free. And a lot of them come from professional players, or I make them from guides of people who've played 3,000 games on Annie and are challenger ranked. So I'm setting these up in a particular way, in a particular framework, and you can go there and train yourself in how to do this. Okay, the final thing I want to talk about before we get to the Q&A is to stop worrying about being efficient and instead be effective. So most people spend lots of time trying to be more efficient. They think, I got to squeeze more time out of my day, get more minutes. If you get more efficient, you'll be able to do more. You know what happens? They end up doing lots and lots of useless things very efficiently. Tim Ferriss is an experimenter. He's somebody who is always trying to push the limits of being efficient. But he's also trying to consider how effective he is. And because he considers every day, what can I do effectively? He's become a very successful person. He can learn a language in nearly a month. He can go from geek to freak, as they say, muscle-wise, like in 28 days. He showed how it is that he did that by being effective. He's written several best-selling books. He's a millionaire. So this is the natural way of the universe, is to try to be efficient without any regard to effectiveness. But effectiveness is what actually gets you closer to your goals. Efficiency is just how to waste time better. Do one single effective thing every day, and you'll be ahead of 99% of everybody else in the world, because that is the default mode of the world. So here are some resources to accomplish this. Headspace.com is a quick resource for meditation. If you look at successful people, if you go to podcasts on YouTube and you listen to interviews of successful people, you will be surprised that one of the most common attributes shared by the most successful people, by the highest performers in the world, across sport, across business, across music, no matter what it is, human performance, a lot of them meditate. Some of them don't call it meditation. Some of them call it my morning walk or quiet time or something. And this isn't meditation like India Buddhist guru kind of stuff. This is meditation like reflecting on thought, listening to your mind, and doing mindfulness meditation. So headspace.com is a good place to go to learn the skill of meditation without any of the mixture of spirituality stuff. Although spirituality stuff is fine if that's your bend. And then there's the journaling aspect, reflection, metacognition. These are all the same term, and it's something that successful people and high performers and elite performers share, is the ability to metacognate, or to think about their thinking, or to reflect on their actions. And you do that by journaling, by writing about it. Writing is essentially having a conversation with yourself. It's an incredibly essential activity. But journaling is not something that's easy to keep on task about, because it doesn't really give you what you want. It only helps you. It's like a tool to get along the way, but it doesn't make you the best mid laner in the world by journaling. So there's an app called Win Streak. It's about winning every day, doing something effective every day, and it's kind of like mini journaling on your phone. So it's the first step. Then there's something called the 5-minute journal, which is an actual journal. You can buy it, and it's about being more effective every day. You can also go to their website and you can just look at the template they use, and you can use it in a Google document if you want. And finally, I'm going to recommend a book. So I'm recommending a website, an app, an actual journal, and a book. Something for everybody. Essentialism by Greg McKeown. It's about the one thing. If you put 100% of your energy in one day, not just on a project like get better at League or learn Zed, but if you do it on one task within that project, you will be more effective. That's why it works to train CSing, to train last hitting. This is why people do drills in sport. This is why drills are so important, because it focuses 100% of your energy, not just on the project, like win this game of League of Legends, but on a particular exact skill, like animation canceling my third Q with Riven. Doing a drill to improve that is how you become a championship player. What is your one thing each day? Okay, so that's the end of my slides, and now I want to go to the Q&A. But first, I want to push this feedback survey. I really appreciate your feedback, and I really need testimonials as well. So if you, after this seminar or right now, whatever you prefer, you can go to mindgames.gg/webinar feedback. And if you could fill that in, that'd be great. If you want to wait till after the Q&A is usually the most fun part, at least for me it is. So it might be better to wait till after that because you'll learn a ton in this session if we have good questions.